Hello and welcome to this episode of Ritter's Rant. Today we'll be talking about nuclear nonproliferation. There's a variety of topics that can be drawn into this, but let's start with the President of the United States addressing the United Nations General Assembly. This is, of course, United Nations Week, the General Assembly debate where the world's leaders converge on New York City to basically engage in a bunch of nationalistic propaganda. Each leader gets up and says things that are to the benefit of them, their countries, and usually to the detriment of everybody else listening. And this is no more so the case than when the President of the United States speaks. Really can't say much about the substance of his address other than it was deeply insulting to the United Nations and the international community, especially those assembled to listen to the president. But one of the things that struck me was the president's call during this speech for the nations of the world to stop producing nuclear weapons and stop producing biological weapons, but because, by golly, if you don't, bad things are going to happen. Well, Mr. President, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's start with American nuclear weapons. Your administration has not made any move to deal with what is one of the more pressing existential crises confronting not just the United States, but indeed the entire world, and that is the upcoming expiration of the New START Treaty. On 5 February 2026, this treaty, the last remaining vestige of decades of arms control agreements that had been successfully negotiated and implemented between the United States and the Soviet Union and later Russia, expires. You, Mr. President, are responsible for, the lack of seriousness in which the United States approaches arms control, especially when it comes to Russia. It was your administration, after all, which in August of 2019 withdrew from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, thereby undoing one of the landmark foundational arms control negotiations that had rid the world of an entire category of nuclear weapons, and you withdrew. And today, how did that work out? Dark Eagle, the American hypersonic weapon, has yet to be deployed. Oreshnik, the Russian counter, is deployed in serial production, and Europe is once again thrust into a very dangerous dark age where at any minute now, if war breaks out, collective civilization as we know it will cease to exist. And that's on you, Mr. President. You did this. And now the New START Treaty is going to expire. What have you done to promote this? You've said that you don't want it to expire. On July 25th, you made such a statement. But less than a week prior to that, on July 19th, your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, gutted the United States State Department. Gutted. 1,300 jobs gone. Many of those jobs were related to intelligence, arms control, and Russian affairs. They're gone, Mr. President. Not only that, the men and women who are supposed to lead the various departments and bureaus responsible for, arms control, formulating arms control, implementing arms control, verifying arms control, they've been removed. And you've consolidated these positions. Now, this may seem like, New York City business acumen, you consolidate, make everything more smooth. But no, when it comes to arms control, you actually need a dedicated bureau for it because it is a very complicated topic, But what you've done is take the bureau responsible for arms control and you've consolidated it with other bureaus, such as those dealing with counter narcotics and counterterrorism. Now, I'm not here to diminish counter narcotics. You've made it one of your flagship projects. Indeed, you're blowing up Venezuelan tuna fishing boats as we speak under the pretense that you're dealing with the narco trafficking. But while your guys are looking at Venezuelan tuna boats, who's looking at arms control? What about counterterrorism? It's real. It exists. I know you've decided to embrace Jolani, the ISIS Al-Qaeda leader of Syria, and pretend that his history doesn't exist and try and whitewash it as it was a tough history. But there is terrorism in the world, and you have people looking after that. Now, if the same people are looking after counter-narcotic trafficking, counterterrorism, who's looking after arms control? And the answer is nobody. In fact, the big honcho that's supposed to be doing this hasn't even been confirmed by the United States Senate yet. And even then, you've consolidated his responsibilities so that the whole arms control agenda will be diluted. And the team that was supposed to look after multilateral nuclear arms control, you've just disbanded altogether. Who's advising you on arms control, Mr. President? And the answer is nobody. And now this treaty will expire. And when it does, you will find that the deep state you say you want to confront, that you want to dismantle, will turn on you in a dime and insist that overnight you take the American nuclear arsenal, currently capped at 1,550 deployed nuclear weapons because of New START, and they're going to ask you to basically quadruple it, get it up to 6,000 to 8,000. Why? Because we have to. Because it's in the interest of national security. And because you don't have adequate advisors around you, you'll probably say yes. How's that for nuclear nonproliferation? Not very good. Now, the Russian president that you seem to be disappointed in lately, Vladimir Putin, has offered you an out. Recognizing that the United States is not in a position to either extend the New START treaty or negotiate a new treaty at this time, he's agreed to unilaterally extend voluntarily the caps on deployed nuclear weapons. That is 1,550. Russia will say, for 1 year, we're going to keep it at 1,550, and they're asking you to do the same. Why? So that you buy time to get your act together, Mr. President. Over in Russia today, there are people in the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Foreign Affairs ready to discuss nuclear arms control, ready to negotiate a new treaty. You need to build a team capable of doing that, and you need to give them the appropriate orders to make this happen. But you need time. Vladimir Putin's giving you a year, but the year isn't free. You see, Vladimir Putin also understands that you have a tendency to do really, really silly things. How about missile defense? You've been told that the United States should build a Golden Dome, the perfect ballistic missile defense system. But I hope you know by now, studying what happened in Israel, there is no perfect missile defense system. That for every missile defense system, there are missiles that will penetrate that defense system. And right now, Russia owns a whole bunch of missiles that will penetrate any missile defense system you plan on building or think you can build. But Golden Dome, as conceived, will never work. You can't afford it, and the technology doesn't exist, nor will it exist. But if you go forward with this concept, then all bets are off. The Russians won't voluntarily cap their nuclear arsenal, because why would they? If you're trying to build a missile defense system that's designed to shoot down Russian missiles while you maintain your missiles at 1,550, there's now an imbalance, and Russia won't go with that imbalance. Who's advising you on this, Mr. President? Who's giving you the advice about the Golden Dome and not to deploy the Golden Dome? You're getting bad advice. You need good advice. But that's not even the major point, because now we have an issue of immediacy. You see, Iran. Iran used to have its nuclear program monitored on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. But you unilaterally withdrew from that as well, Mr. President. And now we have a situation where your government, together with the Israeli government, working with the International Atomic Energy Agency, responsible for monitoring Iran's nuclear program, misused the trust and confidence given to the IAEA inspectors when they carried out their safeguards and additional protocol inspections, took the data that they gathered, turned it over to your military planners, Israeli military planners, and together you launched a surprise attack against Iran, seeking to eliminate their regime while destroying their nuclear infrastructure, which, by the way, has been certified by the IAEA as being exclusively for peaceful nuclear power. Now you're accusing Iran of developing a nuclear weapon. Well, guess what, Mr. President? They may now just be doing just that. Not because they wanted to. They didn't want to. Even until the very end, Iran said, we will have inspectors back in. They were negotiating for the return of IAEA inspectors. When Europe, backed by you, talked about snapback sanctions. That's right. You're going to snap back economic sanctions that are linked to the JCPOA, thereby killing the JCPOA forever. Even though you withdrew from it, Europe ostensibly was still collaborating in it, but now they're gone. And what's happening now? We have the Iranian parliament demanding, it's called a request, but it's pretty strong, that the supreme leader of Iran modify the existing fatwa or religious edict that prohibits Iran from developing nuclear weapons. They say that the fatwa should exist, for Iran's use of nuclear weapons, but that Iran should be allowed to develop nuclear weapons because Israel has nuclear weapons. And that's the other thing, Mr. President. In your call for the world not to develop nuclear weapons, did you once mention the state of Israel? Did you once mention Israel's nuclear arsenal, one that exists outside of the framework of the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty, one that exists void of any inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency? I don't think you did, Mr. President. And do you understand how imbalanced this makes you look? Nuclear deterrence, nuclear nonproliferation, all of these issues, Mr. President, you're inadequate when it comes to discussing this. You haven't done a good job, and you're not doing a good job. And if you continue to fail at your job, the world will become a very dangerous place indeed, if the world continues to exist at all. That's been my rant. The next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know.